As a lot of people know now, Manchester City has basically been called or been told, or people just think of them as buying the league, and that all their success is only due to the amount of money that the owners put into it and things like that. But in my opinion, I feel like it's just the type of investments that the club has made and the certain amount of players that they invest in. And I believe it's type of like a business where you risk what you want to get. So if you risk enough, you might get as big an award. And I feel like they just invest better than most clubs. And right now, I just want to talk about how they are different from Liverpool and from Manchester United, some of like the biggest clubs in England. And I just want to talk about, basically look at the receipts, look at that stuff that people don't look at, like how they have been investing and how this has changed, how they sell their players as well, and where's that money coming from. And I just want to talk about that and just talk about the last 3 seasons. I know that a lot of people say if Coutinho would have stayed in Liverpool, he would have probably won the Champions League, but I don't believe so because ultimately Van Dijk was the player that determined that. And like we've seen in a couple instances with Gareth Bale and him leaving for Real Madrid, that was the mostly where we saw where a huge amount of money was spent on him, like 80 million, I think, 86 million pounds, and it was in exchange for Roberto Soldado, Eric Lamela, Etienne Capone, Vidal, no, Valid, Chiriches, Chiriches, Paulinho, Nasser Chadley, Christian Eriksen, and just things like that. And basically, you could just see how not all those investments, not all those players they put their money into resulted into a lucrative deal in the end, or into a great buy basically. And they're all different, they all have their ups and downs, but I just want to look at the investments that Manchester City's done in like the past 3 seasons, as well as Liverpool and Manchester United. And so we're going to look at the season 2016-17 and see what players they bought and how that changed. They bought John Stones for 50.4 million pounds. They bought Leroy Sané for 45.45 million pounds. They bought Gabriel Jesus for 28.8 million pounds. They bought Ilkay Gundogan for 24.30 million pounds, and they bought Claudio Bravo for 16.2 million pounds, and Nolito for 16.2 million pounds as well. And you could just see that amount of investment that they put into this season. I think it was Pep's second season, and it ultimately ended up being 192.15 million pounds in total, which is a lot of sum of money. It's almost 200 million pounds, and people might say, well, maybe that's too much money. But also, players left. Jovetic left to Inter. Dzeko left to Roma. Wilfred Boney left to Stoke, and as well Martin Di Michelis went on a free to Atletico Madrid. And then we could just look at the next season, 17-18, where they brought other players and they spent a lot of sum of money as well. But this is all going to go into account. I'm going to be explaining this as I go. Aymeric Laporte was bought for 58.5 million. Benjamin Mendy was bought for 51.75 million. Kyle Walker was bought for 47.43 million. Bernardo Silva was bought for 45 million pounds. Ederson was bought for 36 million, and Danilo was bought for 27 million pounds. And if we just add all that together, it's even more of an amount than the one they spent the last season. And you could just see that amount was to win the title, and ultimately they did, but they won with like a historic record, which is what I'm saying. You're getting the best out of your assets, what you're investing in. So it ended up being 285 million pounds, 0.75 million pounds. And then the players that went were like Kalichi and Nacho, Wilfred Boney, Aaron Moy went to Huddersfield for a little sum, and then Nolito went back to Sevilla after just 1 year being there for like 6.3 million. Alexander Kolarov went for 4.5 million to Roma. Samar Nasri went to Turkey for like a sum of 3.15 million. Joe Hart went to West Ham ultimately for a loan, and that was a controversy as well. People thought that wasn't a good move by Pep Guardiola. Jesus Navas returned to Sevilla, his boyhood club, for free. Willy Caballero also returned, or not, he didn't return, but he went to Chelsea on a free as well. And then Pablo Zabaleta, which was like a veteran at the club, he went for free to West Ham. And then the next season, you could just see the changes that they've been implementing, that they're trying to win the title, basically. But with all those acquisitions, they basically just made one buy this next season, the 18-19, just last season, which was Riyad Mahrez, which was for 61.02 million pounds. And they ended up spending 70.73 million pounds in total, which was the other acquisitions of other little players, but it's not the big amount which you expect. And then they had players leave, which was Brahim Diaz to Madrid for 15 million, and then Joe Hart ultimately left to Burnley for like 3.5 million, as well as Yaya Toure, which was an important player for the past few years. He retired, or basically went on a free. And yeah, and then just you can see what they've been doing this season. Their whole squad is basically made. The players that they want have stayed as well, and they have depth in the bench. So they just made acquisitions in the places that they needed, which was why they bought Rodri for 63 million pounds, and then Angelino for 10.8 million pounds, and they ultimately spent 81 million pounds in total, also counting Zach Steffen, who was the other bot they had, but he went on loan to Dusseldorf. And then the loss that they had, the player that left most notably was Company, which went on a free to Anderlecht. And then I just want to compare it to the ones that Liverpool has bought in the past few years. And in the 16-17 season, the type of assets that they got was, they started with Sadio Mane from Southampton for 37.8 million pounds. Then they got Gigi Wijnaldum for 24.75 million pounds. Then they got Loris Karius for 5.58 million pounds. And then they got Joel Matip on a free, basically, from Schalke 04. And then the main player, someone standout that they got later on, was Trent Alexander-Arnold, which actually was brought out from the academy, from the U18s to the first team that season. And they ultimately spended 71 million, or 72 basically. And it was all justified. I could see what they did, but they also had some releases, with Christian Benteke going to Crystal Palace for 28 or 29 million. Jordan Abe went to Bournemouth for 16.2 million. Joe Allen left to Stoke for 13.95 million. Martin Skirtle went to Fenerbahce for 5.4 million. Mario Balotelli finally left Liverpool. He went to Nice on a free. And then they had Kolo Toure, who went to Celtic on a free. And that ultimately was that season. And then the next season, the 17-18 season, they had some huge acquisitions, which they were trying to push for the title, basically the Champions League mostly. But they had Virgil van Dijk for 76.19 million from Southampton. Then they bought their main player, Mohamed Salah, for 37.8 million pounds. And then they bought Oxlade-Chamberlain from Arsenal for 34.20 million pounds. And then one of their standout purchases was Andrew Robinson for 8.1 million, which resulted in them spending 156.49 million pounds that year. But they ended up getting it back, basically, with the sales of Coutinho for like 30 million, and then Mohamedou Sakho for 25 million to Crystal Palace. Divock Origi also left on a loan, and they got 5 million pounds out of that, basically 6 million. And then Lucas Leiva also left to Lazio, and they got 5.13 for him million pounds. And then the last season, they also made the acquisitions, which ultimately resulted in them losing the league by 1 point and then winning the Champions League, which were the greatest acquisitions in my opinion, which was Alisson for 56.25 million, and then Naby Keita for 54 million, Fabinho for 40.5 million from Monaco, and then Shergan Shaqiri for 13.223 million, which ended up being 163.98 million pounds. And all these acquisitions were well justified in the end. I felt like it just gave depth and main squad players the chance. And then they had departures of Dominic Solanke for 19 million, Loris Karius for 2.25 million on a loan deal to Besiktas. Lazar Markovic went on a free to Fulham, and then Emre Can also went on a free to Juventus. And then basically this season they haven't really been active in the transfer market, but I don't feel like they have to. They need a little bit of squad depth. Maybe a number 10 would be my opinion, but for right now they have Stepan Vandenberg from Zoll, and they got him for 1.71 million, and that's basically all they spend during this time. They've only bought one player, but I feel like they're going to be active towards the end of the transfer window. And then they've sold Danny Ings for 19.98 million pounds, and then they sold Alberto Moreno, signed to Villarreal on a free, as well as Daniel Sturridge was released from his contract as well, and they ultimately got 21.78 million from all those departures. And then I just want to look at Manchester United and just see how they invested in these past 3 windows and who they got, and their acquisitions as well. They got Paul Pogba for 94.5 million pounds, and then they got Hendrik Mkhitaryan for 37.80 million pounds. They got Eric Bailly for 34.2 million pounds, and the biggest one was Zlatan Ibrahimovic on a free from PSG. They ultimately ended up paying 166.5 million pounds overall that transfer window, and they had departures of Morgan Schneiderlin for 20.6 million pounds, and then they had Memphis Depay for 14.4 million pounds. He was supposed to be the next Ronaldo. He had the number 7, but it didn't end up panning out the way they thought it would. And they also had the departures of Bastian Schweinsteiger, which left on a free to Chicago Fire. Then they also had Victor Valdez leaving on a free to Middlesbrough, and they ultimately ended up getting 42 million pounds for the departures that they had. In the 17-18 season, they got the acquisitions of Romelu Lukaku for 76.2 million pounds. Then they had Nemanja Matic for 40.2 million pounds as well. They also got Victor Lindelof for 31.5 million pounds for Benfica. And then their biggest transfer of that year was Alexis Sanchez for 30.6 million pounds from Arsenal, and they ultimately ended up paying 178.56 million pounds in total for that whole transfer window, which is quite a big amount. And their departures were Hendrik Mkhitaryan leaving the Arsenal for 30.6 million pounds, Adrian Januzaj for 7.6 million pounds to Real Sociedad, Andres Pereira for 2.7 million pounds on loan to Valencia, and then they had Wayne Rooney going on a free to Everton to his boyhood club, and then Zlatan only ended up staying for just 1 year. He ended up leaving again to LA Galaxy on a free as well. And that was basically the 2017-2018 season. And then the 2018-2019 season was pretty dull for Manchester United. They didn't get that many acquisitions since they spent a lot the past transfer window. The biggest one was Fred that they got for 53 million pounds, and then Diogo Dalot or something for 19.8 million pounds, and they ended up spending 74 8.43 million pounds in total that transfer window. The biggest departures were Daley Blind to Ajax for 14.4 million pounds, Marouane Fellaini for 6.48 million pounds, 6 million pounds basically, and that was basically that season. And then at right now, at this point, the 1920 season, the only acquisitions that they have are Aaron Wan-Bissaka for 49.5 million pounds, and also the acquisition of Daniel James from Swansea for 15.3 million pounds, which ended up totaling 64.8 million pounds. I know they've been linked with Harry Maguire, but it's not concrete yet, so that's why I haven't added it in this video. And their departures were Antonio Valencia leaving on a free to Ecuador, to his home country. I think it was to the Universidad de Quito. I think that was the team. And then Ander Herrera leaving on a free to PSG. So they didn't get any money from that. So what I want to say with this, the main part, is like if we just look at their numbers on a whole, we could just see how they square up. And I feel like Manchester United to Manchester City are pretty equal in the sums of like how much they spent. You see, the first season they spent 166, then they spent 192, basically 30 more pounds. And then the next one, Manchester City spent a whole lot of money, but they've been spending less each other season as well. But Manchester United has been on the same route, spending at least the same amount of money. And what I want to say with this is, I know Liverpool has their big amounts, but if we look at their expenditures, which is the other part that I wanted to talk about, not expenditures, but their revenue, what they're bringing in for the players that they sell, Liverpool basically balances themselves out with the departures as well, which is not the same for Manchester City or Manchester United. I mean, if we look at those numbers, Manchester United are way lower than Manchester City and Liverpool, meaning that they have more revenue from the players that are leaving the club than the ones that they're bringing in, because the amount of money, or the sum of money that they're spending on these players is quite a lot, making it very hard for them to acquire better players. Just like that's the problem with Manchester United. Like I said, if we just look at the revenue that they're getting on the players for each season, you can see Liverpool got 97 that first season, that's 16-17 season, and City and Manchester United only got 40, 42 and 31 respectively. Then you could see Liverpool again getting 200 million. Basically, most of that was Coutinho's sale, but also the other players. And then City also got 82 million from that summer as well. And then Manchester just still got 40 million. The next one, they only got 27. And Manchester City and Liverpool still got 40 million respectively. Then the last season, you can just see that Manchester United basically has got $0 for this season right now. So they're not getting any money in transfers. And Manchester City is getting very little for the amount that they have invested. Just basically £1, and then not a pound, but 1 million pounds. And then Liverpool is actually in a positive, having 27 and only spending 1 million pounds. So like that's what I want to say with this. I mean, for like what they're getting out of the players that they're spending on, Liverpool and Manchester City have been spending as well, but they have also been gaining in player sales. So I feel like most people don't look at these aspects. They don't look at how the club generates its money. I know that it's by TV deals and partnerships and sponsorships and things like that, but it's also by player sales, and that can also be put in right back into the transfer budget. So maybe that's why some clubs are gaining more money than others. And I want to make another video as well on Arsenal, Tottenham, and Chelsea, also comparing them to Manchester City. I'm going to make this like a little series for maybe 2-3 videos, and we'll just compare them all, and you can just see right there. This is all evidence. Like, I got this all from research that I did on these clubs, and this is all I got to say on the matter. I hope you liked the video. I hope you like and subscribe to the channel, and peace.